Hey y'all. Look, I know I didn't post love during lockup. I really haven't gotten a chance to look at it. You know, school is, picking up. We start for real next week. We have meetings and stuff like that. But and yeah, my air conditioner's on, so I'll try to talk close. But um, I wanted to get on here because these are just thoughts that I have. Um, and sometimes there are just things that go through my mind, go through my mind. And so I don't expect that this will make sense to everybody, but it will make sense to some. And the ones it makes sense to are the one I'm talking to anyway. And I want to talk about the culture of stupidity. And when I say stupidity, I really do mean stupidity. That I think permeates so many aspects of this country, it is alarming. It's alarming. And I'll just start with where my bread and butter is, and also what I do for a living. And I'm a history teacher. That's what I do. I teach history to kids. I work hard. I read all the time to constantly make sure that I know things. And me challenging myself and challenging my students and refusing to accept this culture of white supremacy or make white supremacy and white privilege just mere talking points and not actually engaging with the very children, the very people that need to really unlearn this shit, to me, is not enough. Because there are people that use it as talking points. There are people that have their nonprofits and talk about injustice and talk about racism, white supremacy, how we need to support gender, expensive youth, this, that, and the other. And you'd be surprised the number of people who are not engaged, nor talked to, nor have any serious relationships with actual children that they claim to be helping. And when I say culture of stupidity, because there's a lot of things. As a teacher, I can tell you um, all the times, from family to friends to just the average person who feels very comfortable disrespecting you by saying, "Oh yeah, it must be easy. Yeah, you get 3 months out of the year off." First of all, you don't. Okay. First of all, public school teachers aren't even paid during those months. Okay, these are not luxury jobs, because if they were, trust me, everybody would be competing for them as opposed to leaving them. All right. When people say teacher shortage, the media is already mind fucking you. There's not a shortage of teachers. There's a shortage of people who are teachers who are now unwilling to teach because of the lack of respect by students, but also you expect that going in to a large degree because you understand that they don't know better all the time. And you know they don't know better because they're not taught better at home. Now, when I say the culture of stupidity, the level of disrespect, the level of dismissive behavior from parents to say they don't know what they're doing, this, that, and the other, and they should be treating my kid this way, and my kid needs this kind of support, my kid needs this, my kid needs that. And, there's been multiple times in my career I'm thinking to myself, well, if you know what to do, well, why don't you homeschool them? I teach at a private school, so I mean, not everybody that goes to a private school, are paying out the pocket, but the majority of them are. That's why it's private. So since you have all these resources, you have all the knowledge, all the know-how, then just homeschool them, because you have a luxury that other people don't. You apparently don't have to work that hard, and just because you're rich does not mean you work hard. Okay, and I'm not even willing to debate that. That's how it is in a capitalist society. Now, why am I on this rant? Because it's on my mind. All right. And my thing is to expect teachers from the age of 4 to 5 to educate your child 5 days a week, 9 months out of the year, sometimes 10 or 11 months, particularly if your kid ends up in summer school, so on and so forth. They spend we spend 8, 9, 10 hours, depending on what is expected of us at school, certain evenings, parent teacher conferences, whatever, with your children. And you're telling us we don't know what we're doing. Some people just do it for the money, this, that, and the other. First of all, anybody who's been a teacher knows you do not do this for the money. And even those of them who do, so what? Everybody that goes to work every day is doing it for the money. You mean to tell me you show up at work expecting to do stuff for free? What the fuck? Anyway, but my problem with that is as you constantly berate teachers to your kids, telling them they're stupid, I'll take care of this, I'll go up there and address them. I don't like the fact that they told you the school made rules about cell phones, the school made rules about this, the school made rules about this. If we are so stupid, if we are so bad, what the fuck do you look like on a regular basis sending your kid to school? Because let me tell you something. If I had a kid, I'm going to tell you right now what the fuck I would not be doing. It's sending them to a place where I feel like they are not getting support or education when that is my whole goal, in sending them to these strangers, essentially. How stupid is that we live in a country that underpays their teachers, and don't get me with this bullshit. Oh, teachers don't. Let me tell you, there are plenty of countries, okay, particularly in Europe, who get it. In Asia, who get it. Teaching is a job you compete for. Teaching is a job that involves a level of competition, because they understand the importance of what it means to be a teacher, to be an instructor, to be an educator. That we live in a country that says that the very people that teach you are stupid and they don't deserve respect because of how little they're paid, because that's the society we live in. We ask people what they do as a way to decide how much respect we'll give them. Tell me I'm wrong. Somebody says they're a lawyer. Even if they're a terrible lawyer, they're allowed to be a terrible lawyer. But a lawyer means something in this country. If they're a doctor, they could be a terrible doctor. And God knows there's plenty of them. Ask any black woman USA. Okay? There's plenty of bad doctors. But because they're a doctor, they deserve respect. Oh, they're a politician. They're a congressman. So on and so forth. A congresswoman. Congress sits on their ass all motherfucking day. Have you checked the worker strikes all across this country? Exactly. Okay? So with that, people decide how it's okay to treat you and disrespect you based on your profession. But for one that you all are so heavily dependent on, so much that the teachers are stupid, they're lazy, they're this, they're that. For us to be so terrible, y'all was real in a hurry to put y'all's kids back in school in the midst of a worldwide pandemic where people were dying. Y'all was really in a rush to be around these stupid people who don't know what they're doing, this, that, and the other. I'm going to leave that there for the moment. And even in the culture of education, as one of my friends put it, it's just like even in school. People will say, well, I'm a principal, I'm an administrator, I'm this, I'm that. It's almost like, I've watched this over and over again. Administrators, and this is why when you see teacher TikToks and things like that, and they're always talking about admin or making jabs, people who are administrators at this point in the game, this post probably 2008, and that's just a rough figure, many people who become administrators, and this is public school, charter schools, private schools, which also known as independent schools, if you look them up. That's the technical term. They didn't teach long. These are people who may have taught 1 to 3 years, may have gone through a 9-month master's program, an easy one, okay? Because there are so many things they teach you about education. And I never even went to school for education. I went to school for history. My PhD is in history. My degrees are in history. Okay, I got training in my PhD teaching college students, so on and so forth. And now I teach middle and high school students. But I say that to say, administrators are fucking dumb. They're people who were not good teachers. People who become administrators, particularly very quickly and very young, it's not because they were so smart or they were so good at it. They're actually really dumb people. And they're actually people who actually don't even like children. And it's not like I'm talking like with 1 or 2 or 3 people in mind. No. There's several. And the reason why they chose to be an administrator, and people allowed them to be administrators, still administrator, but the reason why they chose to be an administrator is because you get paid more. You don't deal with the kids on a regular basis. And when you do deal with cantankerous, hostile parents and disrespectful children, the gain, even in education, has been to blame the teachers. So when I'm talking about a culture of stupidity in this country, what the fuck do you look like as an administrator? I'm an administrator. I'm the boss. I mean, there are people that actually say that shit. Like, that is the most insecure statement. If you have to talk like that, baby, we already know. But anyway, the reason why they have to do that is because they couldn't make it in the classroom. They couldn't handle the day to day. They couldn't handle those 15, 20, 30 kids in a damn room and doing the hard work of individually trying to figure out these kids' different learning styles, how to best help them focus, while kids troll you, and they do. And they do. Kids can be awful. And you have to really stand in that. You have to really draw lines. You have to have boundaries. And it's difficult to do that when you can't say, like, when I was growing up, the threat of going to the principal's office, that was actually a threat. You didn't think, oh, I could go in there and talk about my teacher any old kind of way, get an apple, get some candy, and then come back to class. That shit happens. People are not joking when they say that on teacher TikToks and stuff like that. And when you go off on a teacher, just a little side note here, and I'm not suggesting that there aren't bad teachers, but they're bad doctors, they're bad lawyers, they're horrible presidents, they're horrible senators, they're horrible representatives in the House. So, and the latter gets public money to be paid as well. I don't see nobody flipping out over that the way they are teachers. You know why? Because teachers are accessible. It's easy to beat up on people that are at the bottom in a society that doesn't give a fuck about education. Because if they did, you wouldn't make it impossible to go to college financially. And if you do take out loans to go to college, impossible to get out of it. Okay? So, miss me with the bullshit. But what does it look like as an administrator of a school to say, yeah, in front of the parents, yeah, this teacher, I totally understand what you're saying, this, and the other. Not do any due diligence, but call teachers down to your office. As if teachers, without any sort of investigation, because these kind of things have happened to me before. And this isn't like past couple of weeks experience. That's not what I'm talking about. But this is on my mind. It's on my spirit, okay? Call the teachers to your office as if they're the children, and then report to them what has been rumored from a 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old complaining and their parents, and you don't even bother to walk down to the classroom to see what's happening. Now, if you want to critique my teaching, by all means, I'm open to feedback. But you up here talking to me about some bullshit, and other teachers as well. Like, there are plenty of teachers who may never see this video, and some who have, who will go, yep, that's exactly how it goes. You go to school for years. Here I am teaching 11th graders who don't even have a high school diploma, but their word means more than mine. And when you're a black teacher in a majority white school, all you're doing, while people talk about all this diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging bullshit, every time you let those kids take free reign like that, particularly the white ones, all you have done, and these are black administrators, the few that get in, and then people of color who are anti-black to the core, okay? All you have done, and white people who are the administrators, I expect that of them, but they're a problem too. All you've done is reify this structure that says anytime a white person opens their mouth, we'll believe you just because you're white. So a 17-year-old white boy, basically who doesn't do his homework, can go in and lie about how his teacher is giving him a hard time or teaching CRT, and with no investigation, you can call them in the office, and that's what happened to me last year, the job I quit. And I've also seen this dynamic. So here you are, quote unquote, administrator, and because of your title, it's accepted that you must know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. You're full of shit. And in the words of one of my colleagues and friends, people who are bad teachers become administrators. That's exactly what happens. And, you know, it was another person of color, African, but I mean, any black American knows for the most part that people, there is a tension, a very real one, between people who are racially black, but people who are immigrants from any part of the continent of Africa. I've seen very few exceptions. Um, and you know, and the Caribbean, who have this air of superiority when it comes to black people. And so, for instance, and this is not a person I dislike per se, but I remember when she came in as like a DEI sort of administrator. She wasn't like the main person, but she was like, whatever. She comes into middle school to be like a DEI person with an Indian woman who hates black people, and I'll tell y'all that story another day. Um, and she was just kind of talking to me, and you're just getting to know somebody. So I asked her, I said, "Oh, okay. Well, what school did you come from?" Just basic talking points, because she was, trying to be friendly. So I didn't, want to be rude. And she told me the school or whatever. I said, "Oh, okay. So how long were you teaching there?" She was like, "A year." I was, a maternity leave replacement, which means the woman, probably went on leave for a whole school year, which you are allowed to do, whatever. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I said, before, where were you? Oh, I was at a charter school. And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I was like, "So how long have you been teaching?" 2 or so years. So it's like, so 2 to 3 years, or? And she was like, "Yeah, more or less." Bitch, you should know how long you've been teaching. That's what I was thinking. And so I said, "Oh, okay." I said, and so you were hired here? She was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, okay." I said, "So were you teaching middle school at those other places?" Because she was asking me questions, so, we're just having a conversation. She was like, "No, I'm an elementary school teacher." And I was thinking to myself, no, not really. You taught elementary school. I don't consider you an elementary school teacher. And now you're an administrator in middle school? What the fuck? And some of y'all might be saying, "Well, what's the big deal? What's the difference?" There's a huge difference. I have to tell you, okay? you ought to have had some boots on the ground in that classroom. So she really only taught for 2 years, because she said she went from charter school or whatever. I guess I tried to help give her an extra year, but when she said more or less, I knew she was lying. And then, people end up putting up people's resumes and that kind of thing. Anyway, when they welcome them to the school community. But I was just making conversation. And this is not, once again, a person I dislike or anything. But they were doing something like a DEI community meeting. And this is something administrators decided that, middle school kids needed to be informed about racism and the things that were happening. And I'm like, these kids are actually more informed than you think. And the whole undertone, because they paired teachers with each other, and they paired me with this person who made it a point to say to me, and this is how I knew she was talking to that Indian lady too much, who was over in middle school. She was like, she said to me randomly one day, she was like, "Well, I'm an administrator. She just kept repeating it, and I remember thinking, what the fuck? Why are you telling me that? I know. First of all, you're a mid-level one, but okay. Okay. And it was clear, it was signifying something. So I remember sitting in community meeting, which is not something you're paid to do or whatever. Well, like a little extra, but it's chump change, for New York. So I'm sitting up here listening to her talk to some kids that I had taught a couple of times in a row at this point. And she is sitting up here with this bullshit ass PowerPoint presentation, and the whole undertone of this meeting, which is why I quit doing it, was that your teachers essentially have been teaching you wrong. And when it comes to those issues of race and justice or lack thereof, who do you think it falls on? What department do you think it falls on? History, overwhelmingly. And here I am, the only black teacher or whatever. And it was nice, to have a couple of students, and middle school kids are not the nicest kids in the world, who, even as the whole undertone was that your teachers have been failing to do this and the other. Why are you telling children this? How stupid do you look as an administrator if y'all got a bunch of teachers that y'all think are failing? Why the fuck do we still have jobs then? And a couple of kids raised their hand, and they were like, "Well, I don't know that I would say it's my teachers. That's Johnson. I had her." Like, I'm sitting there literally in the room. This was her day to, like, kind of take over for this bullshit 45-minute shit we were sitting through. And, and I didn't even, it wasn't necessary for me to defend myself. I knew what I did, but I was thinking to myself, here you want to say, your line is, "I'm an administrator." You have had 2 years of teaching. And after that, I said, well, I'm going to be very clear. I think the way you presented it, and a few times that you presented different things to the students, it lacks context. I said, and you can't expect people to get this in 45 minutes. Now, at this age, even if they were 50 years old, you can't expect people to get this in 45 minutes. You can't teach 400 years worth of history well or at all, really, in 45 minutes of a period. I said, so, if you need help, when you're doing the majority of the presenting, you should let me know ahead of time, and I'm glad to help you. She was like, well, yeah, okay, thank you, I appreciate it. And she was receptive. And I said, I said, do you plan on, I know this is your first year being an administrator, and to me, internally, that was a joke. I said, I know this is your first year being an administrator, but do you plan, or are they going to require of you to at least teach, a class, because I think that helps sometimes to make you aware of what kind of kids you're dealing with and where they are developmentally, so on and so forth. And she goes, oh, I would never teach here. I kid you not, true story. I would never teach here. And I told them I was not going to teach. I just wouldn't teach here. I was thinking to myself, well, bitch, you didn't really teach nowhere else, if we being honest. And I'm just sitting up here like, why does this person even have a title like that? Not because, so that's why I know when somebody says, oh, I'm head of a school, or I started a charter school, not to be impressed. Because I'm sitting up here. It's very rare now that you will find somebody who was in charge of a school. And once again, public, charter, independent / private school, that has actually been a teacher for a significant amount of time. And by significant, I mean at the very least 10 to 15 years. That's who's in charge. That's why I call it the culture of stupidity. When you slash budgets for education, slash budgets for libraries, need I say, I was one of the people resisting and signing petitions for them not to cut funding to libraries here in New York. Luckily, we won this battle, hoping next year's budget, Mayor Adams will do that again. But in Texas, they're still, resisting and protesting, but they've made the decision to make libraries into these detention centers. Who do you think those are for? What neighborhoods do you think those are going to be in? And it's this culture of stupidity, because meanwhile, all this gentle parenting, all this, teachers don't know what they're doing, this, that, and the other, but the very resources for these kids that y'all claim, are apparently in danger when they're with us, is so wild to me. And I could do several parts of this, because I wanted to start by speaking about my particular work experience, because I think you should talk from what you know. But even if we talk about, don't get me started on people like hairdressers. Hairdressers, we hear the horror stories that we've lived them. I knew a man that did gray hair, but he was late, he was rude, he was inconsistent, he didn't communicate, didn't give courtesy calls, you'd be waiting, telling you to come back in 2 hours. Oh no, honey, that's not how that works. And see, when I say a culture of stupidity, that's stupid to me, because as a business person, you depend on customers for your livelihood. And as an entrepreneur, it's not like there are certain amounts of money always guaranteed, right? But that doesn't change people from being disrespectful. Not to mention that TikTok video that has got my soul, when that girl is crying and basically taping, recording the hairdresser rolling her eyes, ignoring her, saying she wasn't going to do her hair on her wedding day. Bitch. And the girl is crying upset. And granted, I understand at that point why you would feel like, fuck it. What do I do? It's my wedding day. Like, I really do. You're mad at me for the way you thought a tone of a text came off? I'm paying you. What does it matter? Like, and she said, I wanted to be clear. Of course she wanted it to be clear. It's her wedding day. That's no small part of somebody's life. And it's just mind-blowing to me what people are able to do. The culture of stupidity. Here we have a country where you have to be 35 years old to run for president. That's a rule. That's on the books. But there is no end to how old your ass can be. Mitch McConnell, who is clearly having, and I don't want anything bad to happen to anybody, but I hate that I even have to have that disclaimer, because he spent the whole career doing things that are harmful and hateful to other people. Pulling health care, making up your mind, you, John Boehner, all of them. Matt Gaetz, all of them. I'm going to be as disruptive as possible to this system to ensure that people don't have access to it. And people who are poor, working class, particularly in the South, will still vote for these people. Culture of stupidity. Just because you are hell-bent on your racism, you are afraid black people might get some change. Because God knows we ain't never first on nobody's list, even for other black people if we keep it real. Obama. So here we have this culture where I've been voting since I was 18. So for 17 years after I'm able to vote, I can't even run for the highest office in the land. Whereas other people can stay in there until they 80, 90, until they die. People just dying in Congress. Come up off of it. If there has to be an age requirement to run, there needs to be an age requirement to stay. And I think it needs to be within age. We talk about people, how they start to lose their faculties at a certain age. That's science. That's research. That's not something I'm making up. I can vote at 18. Boys who registered to vote at 18 can be drafted. But they can't legally drink until they're 21. What the fuck? And all of us should be more outraged. Cop City. And I know, because my brother has been heavily involved in the protest against it. The amount of people killed, being jailed for protesting, the fact that you are creating facilities in, of all places, Atlanta, Georgia, with a high black population where you sold out the black working class, which makes Atlanta, which has a history. It's a very old history. The black elite of Atlanta selling out other black people to live like white people is a long, deep history. But here you are investing in Cop City to train cops to oppress not only other black people, but motherfucker, tell me when that's not going to affect you. Tell me. But you got schools falling apart, people with fucking teachers have to teach with holes in their windows, no air conditioning, all that other shit that they have to endure because they actually believe in the work they're doing despite the lack of respect. Y'all don't put any money in that, but all of a sudden y'all can find millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to train police as a response to the justice movements of people like Ahmaud Arbery and black people killed unjustly. What the fuck? This is my rant. I said it. I meant it. I'm here to represent it. This is just what it is. And if people don't like it, oh well. The culture of stupidity in this country is out of control. And this ain't gonna be my last video critiquing this stuff. But I'm getting tired. I'm getting tired. And I don't know. Look, it is what it is. All right, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll talk to y'all soon. I may or may not get to a video on love during lockup, but right now, you know, I have other stuff and I have to think and focus. And right now, I don't know that I can put that energy into it. All right, I need to get my clothes out to dry. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.